Two of the most beloved PlayStation 1 era RPGs are finally available to play on modern consoles, but are Suikoden 1 and 2 worth your time in 2025? Let me tell you about them. It's so surreal for me to be playing Suikoden games again. I reviewed these when they first came out. I've talked about them before, and I really have been impressed with Suikoden over the years. It's been a long time since I played, so I've had to refamiliarize myself with everything, and I've really been having a great time. These are games about building a community. Both of these RPGs are about sort of recruiting everybody, and they're beautifully done. In Suikoden 1, you play the son of a general in the Scarlet Moon Empire, and through the course of events in the story, you come to realize that the Empire isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's very corrupt, and so you join up with this resistance force that eventually gets to be known as the Liberation Army through all the recruiting that you do, and eventually you fight the Empire. So you go from town to town and collect all kinds of people to join this Liberation Army. In Suikoden 2, you and your young pal are part of this youth brigade of the Highland Army, and you recognize that the leader of the army is a complete psycho, Prince Luca, who is just killing all kinds of people. The game actually does get pretty violent, but you make a run for it, and eventually you meet up with characters that you will remember from the first Suikoden game, and then very similarly, you start to assemble an army and eventually have enough force that you can take on the evil Prince Luca and all of his minions. It's a really cool story. What's surreal to me is that we're living in this era now with all these HD 2D remakes that Square Enix has been making, or these brand new HD 2D games, where it has sort of like Super Nintendo pixelated characters with this beautiful picture book 3D art. Well, these games were kind of like that on the PlayStation 1, where they didn't really go full bore on building us 3D characters that you could look at from every different angle. They kind of stuck with a lot of that Super Nintendo aesthetic, and they had some 3D assets. And of course, everything has been embellished and cleaned up and HDified and beautified. And I've been playing these games on the PS5 Pro, and it's weird. It's like this out-of-time, trippy thing, especially for a person like me that remembers playing these and reviewing them ages ago. But man, I can't believe they're still so freaking fun, both of these games. Suikoden 2 is a much better experience, though. A lot of learning, a lot of tuning went into that game, and it just feels like it got more love as well. I don't know if that's because it's a much more beloved game than Suikoden 1. Suikoden 1 was kind of building the idea and building everything up, and they learned a lot when they built a Suikoden 2. And so the art just looks much more impressive. But it's all been lovingly recrafted and redrafted. All the original hand-drawn art that is in the opening sequences and the cut sequences and stuff, it's gorgeous. All the character renders and stuff. And there are so many characters. That's what's so freaking fantastic about Suikoden. There are just all of these trippy, cool little characters. Some that look like dogs, some magic wielders, and you'll find somebody that's a blacksmith and somebody that's a cook or somebody that's a military leader, and you're going to go around and chat with everybody. And the more that you do that, the more rich your game experience gets. And one of the cool things here too is that you can complete Suikoden 1, collect your whole army of over 100 different characters, and then you get some cool rewards by taking that save game into Suikoden 2, and then you can just carry on. It's a new story. Suikoden 2 is set years after the events of Suikoden 1, but everything's a little bit more polished and tuned and more outstandingly beautiful. I played this on a giant, beautiful TV, and it's running on the best console you can get right now in terms of horsepower with the PS5 Pro. It just ran really well and looked gorgeous. It didn't feel out of place in 2025, which is kind of crazy. I think it's because of all of these HD 2D remakes. It just felt, and Sea of Stars, there's a vibrancy to this kind of art style still, and it felt wonderful to be in that Suikoden kind of storytelling with this style of art. Really had a great time with it. Music's incredible as well, and you can listen to it in the theater mode. You can press the auto battle button if you want to, let the computer handle everything. You can play the battles a lot quicker if you want to. So there's some quality of life enhancements and improvements. but I think you're just going to be amazed by the inventiveness of the developers in the 90s, and also impressed and happy with the amount of love and care that Konami put into this. I think there's been a good reason why we've had to wait a little while, because this was supposed to come out last year. The game disappeared, and it's all based on a classic PSP remaster, but everything has been tuned since then. And there's a good reason why Konami has kept this little jewel of a franchise close to their vest and has figured out a way to bring it back to us. These games are great, both of them. Suikoden 2 is much better, but it's still worth your time to play Suikoden 1 and go through all of that as well. Really impressed with this collection. It's a lot of familiar JRPG tropes. There's going to be some stuff that feels a little bit dated, but there has been some polishing and some updating to the localization. Even though the dialogue tree isn't the most robust, you're not going to mistake anything in here for Baldur's Gate 3. And the combat is based on the troops that you bring into battle. It's all turn-based, but the troops that you bring into battle from your huge roster of characters that you collect, and you can take a handful of those characters, and based on their formation and their skill set, it's going to speak to how well you do on the battlefield. And also, within the gameplay of Suikoden, there is this light tactical role-playing experience, almost grid-based like Final Fantasy Tactics, that you get to kind of command troops and watch the battles occur on screen. Suikoden 2 is just much more ambitious. You'll be earning all kinds of loot, and you'll be augmenting and upgrading your weapons and finding runes and uncovering little secrets and trying to predict when you're going to get backstabbed by a particular group of characters that you will encounter. Somebody might poison you or something like that. You know the drill with games like this. It's a lot of that. But what's crazy is that it's games like Suikoden 1 and 2 that kind of set the tone for lots and lots of JRPGs over the years. These are both worth your time. I'm going to give the Suikoden 1 and 2 HD collection from Konami an 8.5 out of 10.